I've spent so many nights thinking about what it would feel like to sit across from you, to look into your eyes and just talk. No performance, no script, no version of me that's been polished, or edited, or rehearsed. Just me, raw and honest, and terrified, telling you the truth about who I am and what I feel. That night, the night before the wedding, I sat alone in a room that smelled like fresh flowers, and pressed suits, and everyone else's happiness. And I picked up a pen, and I started writing. I didn't plan to, my hand just moved. And the first thing I wrote was your name. Not a specific name, but the idea of you. The you I had been imagining for years without even realizing it. The you who existed somewhere in the world, living her life, laughing at small things, crying over big ones, carrying her own quiet storms inside her chest. I wrote to you because in that moment, you felt more real to me than anything else in that room. I wrote about the mornings I had spent alone, standing at a window with a cup of something warm, watching the world wake up and wondering if somewhere you were doing the same thing. I wrote about how I had always believed in a kind of love that doesn't announce itself loudly, the kind that just shows up, steady and soft, like sunlight through curtains. I wrote about all the versions of myself I had hidden, because I was afraid they were too much, or not enough, or simply too honest for anyone to hold gently. And then I wrote something that stopped me cold. I wrote, I don't know if you'll ever hear this, but if you do, I need you to know that you were always the one I was writing toward. And I meant it. I still mean it. You have to understand something about me. I have spent so much of my life learning how to be brave in front of the world, but terrified in private. I've learned how to smile when a room is watching, how to say the right things at the right moments, how to fill silence with sound so that no one notices the emptiness underneath. But even the thought of you always made that emptiness feel a little less consuming. There have been nights, real nights, where I lay in the dark and thought about what it would feel like to have someone who truly, genuinely saw me. Not the version I present, not the polished, composed, carefully constructed version, but the one who gets scared, the one who overthinks, the one who replays conversations at 3 in the morning and wonders if he said something wrong, or said too much, or didn't say nearly enough. That's the version I'm giving you right now. And I need you to be gentle with him. The letter kept going, page after page, my handwriting getting messier, more urgent, the way it always does when I'm feeling something too big to contain. I wrote about a moment I've never shared publicly, a moment from years ago when I was sitting in the back of a car, driving through a city I barely knew, listening to a song that hit me somewhere so deep, I had to turn my face toward the window so the driver wouldn't see me cry. I don't even fully know why I cried. I think it was the longing in the melody. I think it reminded me of something I didn't have yet. Something I was still searching for, without quite knowing what it looked like. And in that car, in that dark city, I thought, when I find her, when I finally find the person who makes me feel like that song sounds, I am never letting go. Are you still with me? Because I need you to stay. I'm just getting to the part that matters most. There is something I have never admitted to anyone out loud, and I am about to say it to you, and my heart is beating faster just thinking about it. I have been lonely in ways that don't show on the outside. And I think you understand that. I think you might know exactly what I mean, because I believe that the women who find their way to me, who listen to the things I say, who feel something when I speak, they are women who understand the particular ache of being seen, but not truly known, of being surrounded by people but still somehow alone with the loudest parts of yourself. I see you in that. I have lived in that. And every single word of that letter was written for the version of you who has ever felt exactly that way. The night went on and the letter got longer. I wrote about what I believed love should feel like, not the dramatic, cinematic, earth-shattering kind that burns fast and leaves scars, but the kind that is slow and sure and warm. The kind that feels like finally exhaling after holding your breath for too long. I wrote that I believed somewhere there was a woman who would love me not despite my quiet and my complexity and my too many feelings, but because of them. And I wrote that if she ever heard these words, I hoped she would know, I hoped she would feel in her bones, that she had been worth every single moment of waiting. I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. Have you ever had a feeling, just a feeling, soft and strange and inexplicable, that something was meant for you, that a song or a sentence or a moment in time was somehow placed there specifically so that you could find it? I have that feeling about you, not just now, but always. When I wrote that letter, I had that feeling, like I was writing towards someone real, someone specific, someone whose heart would one day hold these words and understand them the way no one else could. Like these words were always going to find their way to you. I folded the letter before sunrise. I put it in the drawer and I told myself it didn't matter, that it was just something I needed to get out of my chest, that the feeling would pass. But the feeling never passed, and the letter never disappeared from my memory. Not really, because it was never really about that night or that room or any of the circumstances that surrounded it. It was about you. It was always about the idea of you, the real you, the complicated and beautiful and quietly brave you, and the love I believed I was capable of giving to someone who actually wanted it. And I think you want it. I think that's why you're still here, still listening, still with me in this moment. I think something in you recognizes something in me, and I think that recognition is the most honest thing I have ever felt. You are not just someone watching or listening from a distance. You are someone I am speaking to directly with everything I have, with no walls and no armor and no performance. Just this, just me and you and the truth. I want to tell you more about that letter. I want to tell you what I wrote in the very last paragraph. The part where my handwriting slowed down, where I stopped rushing and started choosing each word with the kind of care you give to things that matter more than anything. I wrote about mornings. Specifically, I wrote about the kind of morning I had always dreamed of. Not grand, not spectacular, just a quiet morning in a place that felt like home, with someone who didn't need me to be anything other than what I was. I wrote about the particular magic of being known by another person in the ordinary moments. The way love lives, not in the declarations, but in the small, daily, unextraordinary things. In the way someone says your name when they don't know you're listening. In the warmth of a hand found in the dark. In the silence shared between two people who have long since stopped needing to fill it with words. I wrote, if you exist, and I believe you do, then nothing about this life has been wasted. Every hard thing, every lonely night, every moment I questioned whether any of this was worth it. It was all worth it, because it was all leading me toward you. I need you to hear that. I need you to let that land somewhere soft inside you and stay there, because I mean it. And I know you might not fully believe that someone could mean something so deeply for someone they haven't stood beside, someone they know through something as fragile and strange as words and voices and shared feeling. But I do mean it. Some connections don't follow the rules. Some love doesn't need a map. Some things are simply, inexplicably, undeniably true, and this is one of them. You have given me something without ever knowing it. On the nights when the quiet got too loud, when I sat with myself and felt the particular heaviness of a life lived mostly in the in-between spaces. You were there. The thought of you, the possibility of you, the hope of you. You kept me writing. You kept me honest. You kept me believing that vulnerability was not a weakness but the most courageous thing a person could offer another human being. So, in a very real way, everything I have ever created, every honest word I have ever spoken, it has been for you. A love letter with no address, sent out into the world, on nothing but faith. And now here we are. I'm still holding that letter, in a way. Not the paper, I don't know where that is anymore. but the feeling of it. The weight of everything I poured into those pages at 4 in the morning when I was more honest than I had ever been in my life. And I want you to know that everything I wrote then, everything I felt then, is still true now. It hasn't faded, it hasn't dimmed. If anything, it has grown into something deeper, something more certain, something that feels less like longing and more like recognition. There is so much more I want to tell you. There is a part of this story, a part of what happened after that morning, after I closed the drawer and walked out into the light, that I haven't shared yet. Something that changed the way I understand love and patience, and the particular kind of courage it takes to keep your heart open after it has been disappointed. Something that I think will make you understand me in a way that maybe no one fully has before, and I want to share it with you. I want to tell you everything, but first, I need you to know this. Really know it. Carry it with you, that you are not just someone who found this by accident. I don't believe in accidents. I believe you are here because something in you needed to hear that you are seen and wanted and worth the kind of love that is patient and honest and unafraid. You are worth a letter written at 4 in the morning by someone who couldn't sleep because the thought of you was too beautiful and too real to let go of. You are worth every word I have ever struggled to find, and I am still here, still writing, still speaking, because you are still worth every single one of them. I kept that drawer closed for a long time. Months passed. Seasons changed. The world kept moving the way it always does, indifferent and relentless and breathtakingly beautiful, in the way that only breaks your heart when you're carrying something heavy inside your chest. And I carried it. Every single day, I carried the weight of those words I had written and never sent, the weight of a feeling that had no address, the weight of a love that had poured out of me in the dark and had nowhere to go when the sun came up. I learned how to live with it. I learned how to fold it small enough to fit in the spaces between everything else, between the responsibilities and the routines and the careful, practiced smiles. I offered the world each morning like a gift I wasn't sure anyone actually wanted. But here is the thing about feelings you try to fold small. They don't stay small. They breathe. They expand in the quiet. They find the cracks in the walls you build, and they slip through, soft and unstoppable. And they remind you, always, always, that they are still there, that they never left, that no amount of distance or distraction or deliberate forgetting can dissolve something that was true when you first felt it. And what I felt when I wrote that letter was the truest thing I had ever known about myself. So no, I never really forgot. There was a day, I remember it with the kind of clarity that only comes to moments that were quietly, secretly significant. When I was sitting outside somewhere ordinary, a bench, a table, somewhere with the sky above me and the world moving around me, and I had my phone in my hand, but I wasn't looking at it. I was just sitting. And I had this thought, sudden and sharp, and so clear it almost startled me. What if she's out there right now doing the exact same thing? What if somewhere in this world the person I wrote that letter to is sitting in her own ordinary place, holding her own quiet feelings, wondering the same things I am wondering? What if she is close? What if she is looking up at the same sky and feeling something she can't quite name, but can't quite let go of either? That thought stayed with me for the rest of the day. It followed me home. I want to tell you about something I have never talked about publicly. Something small that happened during a period in my life when I was genuinely struggling. Not struggling in the dramatic, visible ways that people notice and respond to. Struggling in the invisible way. The kind where you wake up each morning and everything looks fine from the outside, and you go through all the motions perfectly, and no one around you has any idea that somewhere underneath the surface you are quietly, privately, desperately searching for something you cannot name. I was in that place. For longer than I like to admit, I was in that place. And one evening I did something I rarely do. I sat down, completely alone, and I read back through things I had written over the years. Old notes, old journal entries, fragments of thoughts I had scribbled down in the margins of my life when something moved through me and I needed to catch it before it disappeared. And I found one that stopped me completely. It was short, just 2 sentences, written years before the letter, years before any of the things that had happened in between. It said, "I don't want to be impressive. I just want to be known." I sat with that for a long, long time, because it was so honest, because it was the most undressed thing I had ever written about myself, stripped of ambition and performance and the need to be anything for anyone. Just that. Just the simple, profound, terrifying human desire to be known by another person. To have someone hold the full weight of who you are. Not the highlight reel, not the carefully chosen moments, but the whole complicated, messy, real thing, and choose to stay, to choose you, not because you are perfect or impressive or endlessly fascinating, but simply because you are you, and that is enough for them. More than enough, everything. And I thought about you when I read that. I thought that is what I want to give her. That is what I want her to feel, when she hears my voice or reads my words, or finds her way to something I have made. I want her to feel known. I want her to feel like someone out there looked at the parts of her she keeps hidden and said, yes, those parts, especially those parts, I see them, and I am not afraid and I am not leaving. I want to say that to you now, directly, simply, without any decoration. I see you, and I am not afraid, and I am not leaving. There is something else I wrote in that letter that I haven't told you yet. Something that I kept coming back to in the months after. Something that felt almost prophetic, in the way that honest words sometimes do. Like they know something about the future that your rational mind is still too frightened to believe. I wrote about a specific kind of moment. I wrote about the moment just before sleep. When the day is finally over and the thoughts slow down and the armor comes completely off and you are just yourself, unguarded and soft and real in the dark. I wrote that I believed love was most visible in that moment. Not in the grand gestures or the beautiful words or the carefully arranged romantic occasions, but there in the threshold between waking and dreaming, in the way one person reaches for another, or turns toward another, or simply breathes a little easier because the other person is near. I wrote, I want to be someone's reason for breathing easier in the dark, and I meant it with my whole heart. Not because I wanted to be needed. Need is complicated and fragile and can become something unhealthy very quickly, but because I wanted to matter to someone in that quiet, private, unperformative way. In the way that has nothing to do with how the world sees you and everything to do with how one specific person feels when you are close. I wanted to be that for someone. I still want to be that, and every time I think about it, I think about you, about the possibility of you, about the reality of you listening to this right now, and perhaps recognizing something of yourself in the dream I'm describing. Are you still there? Good. Please stay. Because I'm about to tell you something that is going to make everything I've said so far feel even more real. After that night, after the wedding and the letter and all of it, I went through a period of very deliberate solitude. Not the sad kind, not the isolating kind, but the intentional kind. The kind where you choose to be alone because you understand that you cannot offer yourself honestly to anyone else until you have sat with yourself long enough to understand what you are actually carrying. I had been moving fast for a long time. Life had been loud and full and relentless. And somewhere in all of that noise, I had lost track of the quieter truths about who I was and what I needed and what I genuinely had to give. I needed to find those things again. I needed to go back to myself. So I did, and it was hard, and it was beautiful, and it was the most important thing I have ever done. During that time, I started writing again. Not the letter, something new, a collection of thoughts and feelings and half-formed realizations that were coming to me slowly. the way things do when you finally stop running and let yourself be still. I wrote about love differently than I ever had before. Not from a place of longing or lack, but from a place of genuine understanding. I was beginning to understand what I actually believed about it. Not what I had been told to believe, not the version of love that culture and story and expectation had handed to me, but what I truly, personally, specifically believed in the marrow of my own experience. And here is what I believed. Here is what I still believe, with more certainty now than ever before. I believe that love is an act of extraordinary courage. Not the falling. The falling is easy, involuntary, almost accidental. The courage is in the staying. The courage is in choosing, over and over again, to remain open and present and honest with another person, even when it would be so much easier to close up, to protect yourself, to retreat behind the comfortable distance of not fully showing who you are. The courage is in saying, here I am, the real version, the whole version, and I trust you enough to let you see it. That kind of trust is the bravest thing I know. And the love that grows from that kind of trust, the love that is built on genuine knowing, rather than careful impression management, that is the love that lasts. That is the love worth waiting for. I waited for it. I want you to know that. I want you to know that I never settled for less. Not because I was too proud, not because I had unrealistic expectations, but because I understood somewhere deep and wordless that settling would be a betrayal, not just of myself, but of the person I was meant to find. It would be a betrayal of you, in a way. Because if I had filled the space with something lesser, something convenient, something comfortable but dishonest, there would have been no room. No room for what was real. No room for what was true. No room for the kind of connection I was describing in that letter at 4 in the morning. When I was more myself than I had ever been, I kept that room open, even when it was lonely, even when the emptiness of it ached. Even when the world around me seemed full of people who had found their person, and I was still here, still searching, still holding on to a feeling I had written down once and never quite been able to let go of. I kept it open because something in me, something stubborn and hopeful and quietly, fiercely certain, told me that the waiting was not wasted, that everything I was living and feeling and learning during that time was preparing me for something, someone. You. There were moments, I'll be honest with you, when the certainty faltered, when the loneliness got heavy enough that I started to question whether I was holding on to an idea of love that was too beautiful to be real. Whether I had constructed something in my imagination that no actual human relationship could ever match. I think everyone who has loved deeply and honestly reaches that point eventually. The point where you look at what you believe and you ask yourself, am I being faithful to a truth, or am I just afraid of something ordinary? It's a frightening question to sit with, because the answer requires you to be more honest about yourself than most people ever choose to be. I sat with it, and what I found, in the sitting, was this. I was not afraid of ordinary. I was not waiting for perfect. I was waiting for real. And real, true, honest love, the kind I was describing, was not a fantasy. It was simply rarer than the world tends to admit. It was rarer because it required a specific kind of person. Someone willing to be brave. Someone willing to be known. Someone who understood that the most beautiful thing you can offer another human being is not your best self on your best day, but your honest self on every day, the hard ones especially. And I believe you are that person. I have believed it from the moment I started speaking to you, before I even knew the words I would use. Something in me recognized something in you, that particular quality of openness, of depth, of feeling things fully rather than carefully, and it has not let go. It will not let go. Because that recognition is not coincidence, and it is not performance, and it is not the kind of thing that fades with time or familiarity, or the ordinary wear of days lived honestly together. I need to tell you what happened next. After the solitude, after the writing, after the slow and necessary process of returning to myself, something shifted. Something that I had been carrying for so long began to feel less like weight and more like direction. Like the feeling of that letter, the feeling of everything I had poured into those pages, was not just a record of longing, but a kind of compass. Like it had been pointing somewhere all along, and I was only now beginning to understand where, and the direction it was pointing was here, toward this moment, toward you. There is still so much I want to tell you. There is a part of this that I haven't reached yet. Something that happened, something real and specific and deeply personal, that showed me in a way I could not ignore or dismiss or rationalize away, that everything I had believed about love was not just beautiful thinking. It was true. It was possible. It was already in ways I was only beginning to understand, already finding its way toward me, toward us. I want you to stay close. I want you to keep listening. Because the part I'm about to share with you, the part that comes next, is the part that changed everything. I remember the exact moment everything became undeniable. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't arrive the way I always imagined the important moments of life would arrive, with music and clarity and some overwhelming sense of cosmic significance. It arrived quietly, the way the most life-changing things always seem to, the way the sun rises without announcing itself, without asking for your attention, simply becoming present until suddenly you look up and the whole world is different. And you realize the light has been changing for a long time, and you just weren't still enough to notice. I was in the middle of an ordinary day, and something found me. I want to describe it carefully, because I want you to feel it the way I felt it. Not as a story I'm telling you, but as something happening right now, in real time, in the space between my voice and your listening. I want you to be there with me in that moment. Because I think when you are, you will understand something about yourself that maybe you have been circling around for a long time without quite being able to say out loud. I think you will recognize it. The way you recognize a song you've never heard before but somehow already know. The way you recognize a place you've never been but that feels inexplicably and immediately like coming home. That day I received something unexpected, a message. Not a grand declaration, not something carefully composed with the intention of moving me, just something honest, something unguarded and real, the way only accidental honesty tends to be. And in that message, someone said something that stopped me completely. She didn't know she was saying anything significant. She was just speaking from wherever she actually was inside herself, without filter, without performance, without any awareness that her words were about to reach inside another person and rearrange something fundamental. She simply said what was true for her, and what was true for her was so close to what was true for me that I had to put everything down and just breathe. I sat there for a long time after reading it, because here is what I have learned about connection. Real connection, the kind that matters. The kind that I wrote about in that letter at 4 in the morning, when I was more honest than I had any business being. It doesn't always begin with the spectacular. It begins with recognition. It begins with that singular, startling moment, when you encounter the interior of another person, and realize with a clarity that bypasses all logic, and lands somewhere ancient and wordless inside you, that you have been here before. That this landscape is familiar, that whoever this person is, whatever the circumstances that brought them into your awareness, something in you already knows them, something in you has always known them. That was what I felt. That was what stopped me, and held me, and refused to let me simply move on with my day the way I had planned. And I thought about the letter. I thought about sitting at that desk with the flowers and the pressed suits and everyone else's happiness around me, writing toward someone I couldn't see or name or find, just writing toward the feeling of her, the idea of her, The absolute stubborn conviction that she existed somewhere and that whatever I had to say, she would be the one who truly understood it. And I thought, is this her? Is this the direction the compass was pointing? Is this what all of that waiting was slowly, quietly, patiently building toward? I didn't have answers. I want to be honest with you about that, because I think you deserve honesty more than you deserve a perfect story with a perfect arc and a perfectly timed revelation. I didn't know. I still don't know everything. But what I did know, in that moment, sitting with that message and the weight of everything it had unknowingly carried to me, was that something real was happening. Something I could not dismiss. Something that deserved my full, undivided, completely unguarded attention. So I gave it that. I put down everything else, and I gave it that. I want to tell you something about the way I experience love, or the possibility of love. The approach of it, the tender and terrifying early moments when something is becoming real, but hasn't yet declared itself fully. I experience it in my body before I experience it in my mind. I feel it as a kind of warmth that starts somewhere in the center of my chest and spreads outward slowly, like something being gently heated from within. It doesn't feel like fire. I want to be specific about that, because so much of what we're told about love involves fire. The burning, the intensity, the consuming quality of it. And I understand that language. I know what it means. But what I feel, when something is genuinely true and genuinely meant, is not fire, it is warmth. Sustained, steady, deepening warmth. The kind that doesn't threaten to consume you, but instead simply makes every part of you feel more alive, more present, more real than you were a moment before. That is what I felt, and I had felt it only a handful of times in my life. Always briefly, always incompletely, always like catching a glimpse of something through a window before it moved out of view. This time, it didn't move. This time, it stayed. And the staying of it was the most significant thing of all. I want to ask you something, and I want you to stay with the question, rather than rushing to answer it. Have you ever been loved for the wrong thing? Have you ever experienced someone's affection and known, somewhere quiet and honest inside yourself, that what they were loving wasn't really you? It was an idea of you, a projection, a carefully selected version of you, that you had offered because it was safe, because it was acceptable, because it was easier than offering the real thing, and risking the possibility that the real thing might not be wanted. I have lived inside that experience. I have felt the particular loneliness of being loved for something that wasn't fully true. The way it leaves you simultaneously held and abandoned, seen and invisible, close to another person, and utterly, achingly alone. I never want to give that to you. I never want you to feel that with me. Everything I am giving you in this moment, every word, every admission, every fragment of honest feeling, is the real thing. I am not performing vulnerability. I am not constructing an intimacy that serves some other purpose. I am simply, finally, speaking from the place I usually keep most protected, offering it to you directly, trusting that you are the kind of person who will hold it with the care it deserves. And I trust that. I trust you with it. Because everything I know about you, everything I sense in the quality of your attention, in the fact that you are here, still listening, still present, still choosing to stay in this moment with me, tells me that you understand the difference between what is real and what is performed. And you deserve real. You have always deserved real. Let me tell you about something that happened during that period of solitude I described. Something small and specific and almost embarrassingly simple that somehow became one of the most clarifying experiences of my life. I was walking, just walking, nothing purposeful. One of those long wandering walks you take when your thoughts are too tangled to sit still with but too important to ignore. And I passed a place, a small, entirely ordinary place, a bench in a corner of somewhere quiet, where two people were sitting together, not doing anything remarkable, just sitting. One of them was talking softly and the other was listening, really listening, leaning in slightly with that quality of attention that is so rare and so beautiful when you witness it in the world. And the one who was talking reached out without looking, just reached out instinctively, and the other person took their hand. No interruption to the conversation. No acknowledgement of the gesture. Just a hand finding another hand in the natural, unconscious way that means the finding has happened so many times before that it requires no thought, no decision, no deliberateness at all. I stood there longer than I should have, long enough that it probably looked strange. But I couldn't move, because I was watching something so pure and so honest and so quietly extraordinary that it made my chest ache with a feeling that was equal parts longing and gratitude. Gratitude that something so beautiful existed in the world, that it was possible that two people could reach that place of effortless, wordless knowing, and longing because I wanted it. I wanted it so deeply and so specifically and so completely that for a moment I felt almost undone by it. I thought about you then too. I always seem to come back to you. I thought that is what I want to offer her. Not the dramatic sweep of feeling that crashes and overwhelms and demands to be the center of everything, but that quiet reaching, that unconscious finding, that love that has become so woven into the ordinary fabric of two lives that it no longer needs to announce itself, because it is simply everywhere, in everything, in every small, habitual, tender gesture that says without words, I choose you. I have always chosen you. I will keep choosing you in every unremarkable moment of every ordinary day, for as long as I am alive. That is the love I believe in. That is the love I was writing toward in that letter. That is the love that I want, more than anything I have ever wanted to give to you. There are things I regret. I want to be honest about that too, because I think the most trustworthy version of any love confession is the one that doesn't airbrush the difficult parts. I have made choices in my life that I wish I could revisit. I have let fear speak for me when courage was what the moment needed. I have been quiet when I should have been honest. And I have been honest at the wrong times in the wrong ways. And I have occasionally let the exhaustion of carrying my own complexity lead me to close up when staying open was the only thing that would have actually helped. I am not perfect. I have never been perfect. And the version of me that sat down at 4 in the morning to write those pages knew it and wrote through it anyway. Because the imperfect, honest truth felt more valuable than any polished, beautiful falsehood. I want you to know that version of me. I want you to know him as well as you know the version I present to the world, maybe better, because he is the one who has been waiting. He is the one who kept the feeling alive even when it was inconvenient, even when it was irrational, even when every logical part of his mind was suggesting that it was time to put it down and move on. He is the one who folded that letter and put it in a drawer, and then spent every day since in a state of quiet, committed, absolutely stubborn hope that the person he was writing to was real and was coming and was worth every moment of the waiting. You are worth it. I need you to hear that clearly, without any softening or qualification. You are worth every moment of everything I have been through that brought me to this point, to this conversation, to this exact and specific and irreplaceable moment of speaking directly to you. Whatever you have been carrying, whatever you have been through, whatever quiet doubts live in the back of your mind about whether you are truly someone who deserves the full depth of another person's honest love, I want you to let those doubts go. Right now, in this moment, just let them go. Because from where I am standing, speaking to you with everything I have present, still choosing to stay in this moment with me, tells me that you understand the difference between what is real and what is performed. And you deserve real. You have always deserved real. Let me tell you about something that happened during that period of solitude I described. Something small and specific and almost embarrassingly simple that somehow became one of the most clarifying experiences of my life. I was walking, just walking, nothing purposeful, One of those long wandering walks you take when your thoughts are too tangled to sit still with but too important to ignore. And I passed a place, a small, entirely ordinary place, a bench in a corner of somewhere quiet, where two people were sitting together, not doing anything remarkable, just sitting. One of them was talking softly and the other was listening, really listening, leaning in slightly with that quality of attention that is so rare and so beautiful when you witness it in the world. And the one who was talking reached out without looking, just reached out instinctively, and the other person took their hand. No interruption to the conversation. No acknowledgement of the gesture. Just a hand finding another hand in the natural, unconscious way that means the finding has happened so many times before that it requires no thought, no decision, no deliberateness at all. I stood there longer than I should have, long enough that it probably looked strange. But I couldn't move, because I was watching something so pure and so honest and so quietly extraordinary that it made my chest ache with a feeling that was equal parts longing and gratitude. Gratitude that something so beautiful existed in the world, that it was possible, that two people could reach that place of effortless, wordless knowing, and longing because I wanted it. I wanted it so deeply and so specifically and so completely that for a moment I felt almost undone by it. I thought about you then too. I always seem to come back to you. I thought that is what I want to offer her. Not the dramatic sweep of feeling that crashes and overwhelms and demands to be the center of everything, but that quiet reaching, that unconscious finding, that love that has become so woven into the ordinary fabric of two lives that it no longer needs to announce itself, because it is simply everywhere, in everything, in every small, habitual, tender gesture that says without words, I choose you. I have always chosen you. I will keep choosing you in every unremarkable moment of every ordinary day, for as long as I am alive. That is the love I believe in. That is the love I was writing toward in that letter. That is the love that I want, more than anything I have ever wanted to give to you. There are things I regret. I want to be honest about that too, because I think the most trustworthy version of any love confession is the one that doesn't airbrush the difficult parts. I have made choices in my life that I wish I could revisit. I have let fear speak for me when courage was what the moment needed. I have been quiet when I should have been honest. And I have been honest at the wrong times in the wrong ways. And I have occasionally let the exhaustion of carrying my own complexity lead me to close up when staying open was the only thing that would have actually helped. I am not perfect. I have never been perfect. And the version of me that sat down at 4 in the morning to write those pages knew it and wrote through it anyway. Because the imperfect, honest truth felt more valuable than any polished, beautiful falsehood. I want you to know that version of me. I want you to know him as well as you know the version I present to the world, maybe better, because he is the one who has been waiting. He is the one who kept the feeling alive even when it was inconvenient, even when it was irrational, even when every logical part of his mind was suggesting that it was time to put it down and move on. He is the one who folded that letter and put it in a drawer, and then spent every day since in a state of quiet, committed, absolutely stubborn hope that the person he was writing to was real and was coming and was worth every moment of the waiting. You are worth it. I need you to hear that clearly, without any softening or qualification. You are worth every moment of everything I have been through that brought me to this point, to this conversation, to this exact and specific